Hi, y'all. Good evening, everyone. My name is James. As y'all heard, I am on staff here at Boston Ujima Project, and I'll be one of the presenters for our resourcing member team reflections today. Kelsey, do you wanna?
Hey y'all, I'm Kelsey. I have been a solidarity member with Ujima for a couple years now, and a monthly donor slash member team of like what used to be known as UNESCO, which no longer exists, and now the resourcing mobilizing team.
Cool, cool, cool. So yeah, we're gonna share our 2023 reflections from the resourcing member team. I also put in the someone say something. I also put in the chat the link to this. I think everyone should have access. I'm obviously sharing it on my screen, but for folks who just want a little more um, uh, sense of the details, I can just hop in there. So again, welcome. And so I guess starting off, oh, let me put my timer on because I do want to keep it, keep make sure I'm on time. Uh, I want to just start with noting that at the end of 2022, coming into 2023, a big reflection that we had was that we need to really leverage our member teams to support our resourcing and our fundraising work. I just wasn't I think doing the proper organizing to really activate our member teams to come back into the fold in this way. Actually, being I'm a staff member, and I'm also a Ujima member, and actually one of my first interactions with Ujima was through the fundraising member team, which is sort of the former version of this resourcing member team. And so a big sort of endeavor for us last year was just reactivating this team. And so I was doing we had our first sort of kickoff meeting in April where I sort of gave folks sort of a bit of a timeline of just the fundraising team, some of their sort of early ideas and how some of those ideas have translated into our general fundraising strategy. To the hiring of me and some of our sort of early fundraising um, uh, events like Disco Virtuale and oh my what I skipped the first one actually Gala Virtuale, but also um, really got people to speak to see some of the early thinking around the Sustenance Monthly Giving Program and United Black Economies campaign. Um, and I really wanted to, I think, with activating this member team, really want to like launch them into um, a project, something that they can build on and dive into that really reflects a practice and resourcing the organization. But of course, just in our member team meetings, we sort of I kind of introduce them to all the things that we do to raise money and how we do it. As you can see in the slide right now, it kind of illustrates some of our key strategies. Stewardship, funder cultivation, largely related to just how we build relationships with our institutional partners, one-on-one meetings, responsible partnership, transparency, collaboration, invitations to be with us. These are sort of key values that Nia and I really hold on to and cultivating our institutional partners. But as it relates to just our individual giving work, United Black Economies campaign and sustenance were some of the more recent sort of major efforts in diversifying and building our individual giving base. And of course, we do a lot of creative stewardship work to really nurture and appreciate our donors. And I'll speak, hopefully many of y'all read Bliss, Channel Bliss, which just came out the end of last year, which was an offering reflective of this practice. And of course, we have these other things going on. And so last year, we kind of like got together on Tuesdays because Tuesdays seemed to be the date that with the people that were in the resource member team at the time, like Tuesdays was actually the best day for us to meet. And so we like pulled the team and we're like, let's do this, let's try this out. Cause there were so many things happening on Wednesdays already. And we thought maybe pulling our member team outside of that could maybe help with just like us I don't know, would just be a better time for people. Essentially, it wasn't and it may be less competitive with some of the other things that were happening on Wednesdays. And so this is just like a list of uh our meeting notes from the month, from the year rather, and just I'll be mentioning this again. We've since shifted it back to Wednesdays now, because we feel like that might be we learned that that was a key reason why a lot of people weren't able to attend our resource meetings last year. I'm gonna pass it to Kelsey to speak more about some of the challenges and opportunities that we recognized as it relates to this area of work.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I want to give like really big ups to Ujima staff members and for those who have joined us along on this journey. So as James mentioned, when this group initially started, Tuesdays was decided to be the best day. And this was based off of the folks who were in the room, myself included. But slowly over the course of time, our numbers dwindled pretty significantly. And so upon reflection, what we're wondering and what we're sitting with is that maybe Tuesday isn't the best time for the full Ujima ecosystem. And so, knowing that this is a challenge, that we don't have a lot of folks right now, what we've decided to do is shift back to Wednesdays, which will bring us into alignment with the current Ujima workshop schedule and member teams. And so within that, one of the other things that we're exploring, and this comes up in later slides as well, is we recognize that like during the summer, there was a bit of a like fall off. So in spring, there was like, I think maybe 4 or 5 members of it who were not staff members. And then summer hit and there was just this huge drop off. And so sitting with like, what does that mean? And why did that happen? And how might we be proactive within that? And you can see here in the second challenge that staff were a huge major force in moving this work. And we know that we need more support from members and other folks in the Ujima ecosystem to really make this member team thrive. And so the opportunity here is recruitment. We're wondering, what is it going to take to have more folks join this team? A couple ideas that we have are political education. So really making sure folks know why resourcing is important and why specifically resourcing from the ecosystem versus institutional funders might be a tactic that Ujima is playing with. Exploring our money stories, why resourcing might be a bit intimidating for folks, and then doing more invitations to current donors to plug into Ujima in different ways. And more on those opportunities later. Pop quiz, just kidding. But we will be asking y'all for feedback later on in our session. So I'll pass it back to James.
Yeah, and I just want to say a huge shout out to everyone who I'm going to speak to sustenance more directly soon, but who participated in our sustenance campaign. I think it was our first sort of monthly donor like drive, and I think it could be really intimidating to ask people for money, particularly for them to give money on a reoccurring basis for and I think it takes practice, and so I really appreciate everyone who tried and who were successful in doing that, because I do think it's a key practice in how we just like build our work, and really leaning into community as a resource in supporting our institution. And so, like as I mentioned before, like a key thought that I had in starting this group was really for us to sort of really build with each other, but also have jump into a juicy project that we can sort of like that felt like needed and supportive of for the organization. And so prior to 2023, we had actually formally launched our reoccurring giving program called Sustenance. And so Sustenance is noted here is our reoccurring giving, learning, and organizing community that actively hold on one second, staying in the way. That actively directs resources to sustain the general operating needs of the Boston Ujima Project now and in the future. And we had, prior to Sustenance sort of becoming a formal program, we had sort of retained a pretty good chunk of recurring donors, but we really wanted to formalize it with a program. And so we started in 2022, And I really want to come back in 2023 doing it just the way it was supposed to happen. I think the first time we did it, it was really focused on emailing people and less on just like donor organizing. And so the last year I really wanted to like incorporate that as a key feature of the campaign. And so our goal was to reach 100 sustenance donors by the end of our campaign. We had, I'll speak to that in a second, but we were really targeting really our warmest prospects, and former donors, first-time donors of 2023, multiple people who have given multiple occasions, who weren't like formally giving as part of this program or didn't participate in like the automated function of this program, as well as one-time donors. And our key sort of tactic was doing direct donor outreach. It's asking members who had relationships with some of the people who had given who were in our target audience, asking them to sort of do that direct outreach, to really leaning on relationships to do that, as well as executing an email campaign that I think went out the beginning of the campaign and toward the end. But it was really more focused on our donor organizing strategy. And so at the beginning of our sustenance campaign, we had about 55 active sustenance members. By the end, we had 85. And so we acquired 30 and in 1 month, which was pretty good feat. We'd wanted to get to 100, so we didn't quite make our goal. But super proud of our team for getting out there and starting this practice. We also have, I think right now we currently have 80 active sustenance members who give on monthly, quarterly basis, and all who are giving in an automated fashion. However, we do have a number of people who are not who don't give in an automated fashion, but who give on a recurring basis. And so I think a big key of ours, effort of us, is better like engaging with them, better learning about them, and better thinking about how to bring them into the fold of our just philanthropic practice. Now I'm gonna pass it to you, Kelsey, for this challenges and opportunities.
Awesome. So here again, and like this is where you'll see me be a little bit repetitive. Sustenance was largely driven by staff. And what we found is part of that might have been because sustenance really was taking its height right around that summertime, which is also when we saw the drop off of memberships, or of folks coming to the meetings. And so things that we are sitting with as a member team is how can we build around current members to understand their capacities? And then within that, outlining, having that calendar ready to go and onboarding new members as they join. So that way they can anticipate potential conflicts ahead of time, and then speak to that. And then one other thing that I was sitting with that could be interesting to explore is like what it would look like to create a space for resourcing members to come together while they're doing this outreach. Specifically as like a way for folks to be in community while they are also taking action, particularly through a virtual setting, because this is kind of similar to a get out the vote process with Ujima, where you could do this individual outreach on your own. But then within that, how could that also create space for accountability? So if James and I are committing to meeting like next Thursday to make calls or to send texts, and I don't show up or James doesn't show up, that also gives us an opportunity to say, hey, was everything okay? I missed you on Thursday. Were you able to get your outreach done? So not as a way to like scold or shame or anything like that, but just for a way to make sure that we are in community while we're also resourcing. Take it away, James.
Thanks, Kelsey. And we're gonna have about like 2 more minutes, so I'm gonna try to be quick here. But stewardship is really key to our work. We're continuing to think about how we can do this more consistently, more creatively. And we this year, as I mentioned, released Channel One Bliss, which was a collaborative sort of like resourcing comms project. But this is, really part of a long list of Ujima Day offerings that we've done every year to really say thank you to all of our people. Historically, people give a lot of attention and time to like donors at the end of the year or any type of the year, and we really try to, we don't do that. There's so many people that are in our ecosystem that contribute to it thriving and growing, and this is just a thank you to everyone. And so our donors are included in that, but we definitely feel like we can do more of that. So I'll pass to you, Kelsey, to speak to more stewardship stuff.
Yes, and I'm going to try to be quick because we do still have that piece. So, doing only 3 big thank yous, but realizing we can do a little bit more, finishing up a stewardship plan and operationalizing those small thank yous. Again, that staff-driven piece is coming up. Starting planning early so that way we can really bring in those more voices, reaching out to folks for additional help, and also offering additional ways for them to get involved, whether that's through the resourcing group or somewhere else. And within that, one of the things we're really sitting with is political education, right? Like, how can we get more deeper buy-in into resourcing work, recognizing that asking folks for money and asking folks for time can feel really difficult for many of us, myself included. Like, I had to work through a lot of stuff on that. And then we wanted to do better at tracking and managing the holiday box distribution. And within that, part of it is asking for help. But this is also dependent on the addition of more members. And so that is like the big piece is recruitment, I think is a big theme. But with that, James, if you could shift to the next slide, we have our fun introspective piece. So 2024 and our asks. As I mentioned, a reoccurring theme was that staff really took the lead in this group. And so what we're curious about and what we're sitting with for those of you in the room today, we're not, making an ask of you to join, though we would love for you to join the resourcing team. We're really cool, I promise. But we would love for you all to think about what would it take for you to join this particular member team. And what our hope is for those of you who answer the question, and you could either drop it in the chat what your thoughts are or come off mute, is that it will help us better understand like what we can do to bring more folks in and to be more welcoming. And so with that, plug for the next resourcing meeting, which is February 7th at 7:15. It's the first Wednesday of every month. We would love to see a few of you there. But we also just would really love your thoughts on like, what else? How can we invite y'all in and our larger ecosystem in that much more? So yeah.
Yes, and I know the arts and culture organizing team needs to go. So y'all can definitely sit on this question and answer it when we do Q&A. But this is the end of our reflections. So if anyone wants to react now, I'm down. But we can also save it for later. So thank y'all so much.
Perfect. We're gonna pass it over to the arts and cultural organizing. And then we can take questions at the end. So I'll pass it over to Alula.
Cool. Good evening, y'all. Peace and blessings. Thank you, James and Kelsey, for speaking on reflections for the resourcing team. Catherine Nakato and I will be speaking on some reflections for the arts and cultural organizing team. I'm gonna share screen real quick. And just give me like a thumbs up if folks can see my screen. Wonderful. Cool. So yeah, I guess I first want to start off with some intentions for the arts and cultural organizing team. Um, I often find sometimes in giving like the spiel about the team that some people have questions about like the relevancy or the tie-in to the rest of the work. And I think the way that a lot of us see the arts and cultural organizing working alongside the rest of what Ujima gets up to is really as a space for creation towards movement and movement towards liberation, but also as a space to rest and relax in creative pursuit and to be imaginative and envisioning a new worlds. And it's also like a big entryway doorway to Ujima for a lot of people. It was one of my entryways to becoming a member. Um, so this presentation will largely concern our Marco Learning Pod series, which is one of our flagship programs. So I'll dig into that. I'll dig into some other programming that we've gotten up to, and then I'll pass off to Catherine Nikato, who will be speaking on her experience as a micro learning pod series facilitator. Um, so we'll take a look back at our micro learning pod series, and we had 4 of them in the year 2023. So the year started off with the Brown 2 Book Club with Tamashi Jackson. Tamashi Jackson produced a book, which I actually have right here, but there's also a photo of it on the slide. But the book project explored the history and legacy of school desegregation in the United States, the special focus on Boston, and there were interviews with a lot of subject matter experts, including our very own Nia Evans. And sessions for the microlearning pod series involved community members and interviewees, reading portions of the book itself, and guided conversations followed concerning some of the themes integral to the text. And Tomashi is an American multimedia artist, born in Houston, raised in LA, currently lives and works in New York and Cambridge, and was an Ashe Ashe cultural grant recipient from the Boston Ujima Project in 2021, I believe. And so this was our first microlearning pod series of the year. The next microlearning pod series that we hosted was with Chantel Miller, who is currently our Boston Ujima Project Artist Fellow for 2022 up through this year. And the series was titled Chantel's World, Art, Imagination, Inspiration. Just honestly a beautiful series. I personally enjoyed participating in it. We got a sense of Chantel's approach to her own artistry, her own creative practice as a painter. We got to ask her questions and she presented aspects of her process. And a decent amount of the series was guided group discussions, storytelling, and Chantel walking through how she paints. You can see there's some examples on this slide of her work. Her work is very somatic and embodied, so it was a really interesting chance to be in space with one another, or to be in digital space with one another, and to reflect on just like how we feel as human beings and like how we like create out of our bodily and mental sensations. Just a really fun pod series. Our second to last microlearning pod series that happened in the end of summer, beginning of fall, was with Saskia Van James, and was writing to repair our tribe. She led us along the storied history of zine making as a place of political expression for resistance amongst Black communities in the United States. And she led us through a 3-part series that dug into independent publishing as a means for knowledge sharing and community building. The particular focus of her zine making and of this series was on reparations, collective wealth, and wealth redistribution. And so she led us through history, showed us some interesting examples of Black publications, including Black Quantum Futurism, before we got to our last session and actually started making zines around the topic of reparations for descendants of chattel slavery in the United States. And Saskia has a couple projects that are coming out of this micro-learning pod series, and I believe is getting together a Black Quantum Futurism book club or reading group which I am excited for. Our last microlearning pod series facilitator is Catherine Nicotto, who I'll be introducing in a second. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk about some other programming that we got up to last year. So we had Black Magic, which was really successful, really fun also as a volunteer and a person who ended up being photographed or tintype photographed by Adam Davis. Much gratitude to him for bringing the project to us. So Adam Davis is a tintype photographer, a photographer, portraitist. He set up shop in Black Market this past summer, which is where Ujima has its offices and its events. He set up shop there and continued this project of his called Black Magic, which is endeavoring to capture 20,000 Black faces, countenances, and spirits across the country by way of tintype photography. Tintype photography is a 19th century photographic technique that creates images on metal plates, sort of results in this kind of thing that you see in this GIF up top. So he invited us all into his makeshift studio, into his alchemizing and his process. It was a beautiful time. I actually have my own tintype photograph that I'm now showing in the camera. I use this as my profile picture for almost everything. But yeah. And last but not least, I wanted to talk about Juneteenth at the ICA. The Boston Ujima Project was able to put together a full day of programming for this past Juneteenth that involved documentary screenings, that involved bringing local small vendors into the ICA to sell arts and arts-related works. There were some music performances. There were some brilliant DJs, some folks playing chess, some different artist collectives that stopped by. And in the upper right, you will see myself along with three of my friends, Terrence Theus, DJ Felix, and our next presenter, Catherine Nicotto. So that's all that I've got for now. We are a little bit short up on time, so if folks have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them until after Kat goes or leave them in the chat. But now I will pass to Kat.
Thank you so much, Alula. I'm just gonna, so this is my micro learning pod reflections for the Disrupt the Narrative series. It's perfect that because I had set up for y'all to save your conversation until the end so I can just run through this entire thing. But if anything does come up, feel free to let me know. And I don't have my contact at the end of this, but I'm sure you guys will be able to get it. So over the course of the past few months, I had the privilege of participating as a microlearning pod facilitator in a series called Disrupt the Narrative. Here are a few of the flyers and a few of the individuals that I had planned and have done conversations with throughout this series. Disrupt the Narrative is an experiential conversation series centered on radical narrative change, and the series includes guest speakers selected by the host, me, where individuals and the community explored how they have and are disrupting the narrative. Now, the way I initially envisioned working with Ujima was a bit similar to the lyrics of one of my favorite theme songs and shows, That's So Raven. I thought that I was gonna gaze into the future. I thought that life would be a breeze, but there was trouble in the distance, and I quickly realized that it was similar to the title of my series. My first initial engagement of the series working with Ujima was Disrupted. Now, the intent was good, the impact was mid, but if things were done correctly, it would have been a great experience. For those who may not know the term mid, it's used as a slang term describing something as mediocre or low quality. In the beginning, there were minimal systems put in place for me as a microlearning pod facilitator, specifically with expectations and systems that were set out. What are the roles for individuals in Ujima, specifically working on the microlearning pod facilitations or microlearning pods in general? What are the roles and responsibilities in place for a microlearning pod facilitator? What's the process for getting flyers done? In regards to COVID regulations, I know it was communicated that there were some in place, but the process of cancellation or rescheduling an event that someone had spent months doing, hours before an event, was just managed a bit poorly. And really poorly communicated to me in the beginning process of this. Now, I do understand that there was a transition of roles with Paige leaving the company, no fault at the organization, but there was no succinct system put in place from where I was sitting of what needed to get done. Therefore, it left me in a position of, after months spent working on the microlearning pod facilitation, I saw the value of Ujima, but transparently at the end of the day, I didn't know if they saw the value in me. So at this rate, I felt like I wanted to jump off a cliff into the ocean of far away from Ujima. And I was feeling like water, a bit salty. But y'all had an incredible team of people that were holding it down through all the adjustments to make the first microlearning pod successful. Very specifically, I'd be remiss not to call out the people that are pictured here. Thanks to your Ujima website for me to be able to take off these pictures, Mary, Genoa, and Natasha. They helped me navigate everything from last minute changes of location to getting in contact with the guests I was supposed to be speaking, dropping off materials, setting up the Zoom accounts, recording and taking notes, even though they weren't able to be present for the conversation. They reminded me of the principle of Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility. Now, needless to say, the actual event turned out to be a COVID-friendly and great conversation. People online were able to walk away from this conversation with developed partnerships. Some individuals were able to walk away with a therapist and tangible pieces for them to utilize in their day-to-day lives.
Catherine, I don't think we can see school anymore. Cut off.
Yeah, we can't see the picture. I think that's what James wanted to say. We just can't see the picture on the screen.
Oh, I don't know why that is.
There we go.
You guys can see it now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, the turnout was great. The feedback was incredible, but the only qualm I had post this event was, oops. Perfect. Uh-oh. Okay, y'all can still see my screen?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
We're looking at a YouTube now.
Yeah, was this YouTube video? I actually sent an email expressing to take this YouTube video down off the Ujima account because, as I used in the word earlier, the video was mid. The quality was mid, the sound quality was mid, and there were a few glitches throughout the video, and it's a poor representation of my work. Where my work is posted goes beyond a view and a like on a page. It's a representation of who I am, the skills I have, and the work that I'm able to produce. Due to the pushback on this event happening and the inadequacy leading up to it, do me a favor. Y'all still have time. Take this video down. Now, at this rate, y'all are probably looking like this and mentally feeling a little bit like this as well. But despite the fact after this first event, I thoroughly enjoyed working with Ujima. Despite the adversity that happened, I was able to learn that there is an opportunity in adversity, and you all made an opportunity worthwhile. From the first glitch, the team stepped up in ways that went above and beyond anything that I could have expected from the first event. Natasha was on top of marketing communications, making sure that I had everything done when it needed to get done, and I mean, she was on top of me. Mary was consistently having meetings with me to understand more of what I was looking for while providing context of what Ujima was able to do. Genoa did check-ins, updates, and was very hands-on the day of the events when it came to setup, breakdown, and managing what was happening during the events. The camera equipment and quality for this specific event with Circle Square were immaculate. The Zoom recordings were well captured. The staff on site, shout out to Gio, had a play-by-play of details that needed to be done and navigated when problems arise super well. And there was food, which was glorious for the people that pulled up to the event pretty hungry. So again, this event actually turned out to be pretty fantastic. The conversation was great. People came in, they walked away with an opportunity to engage in the next iteration of the Circle Square to Magic Wit series. They're able to talk about the blockages that they have with imagination and consider what it would be for them to explore their creative endeavors as an adult. The turnout was great. The feedback was incredible. My only qualm with this event was there was none. Gotcha. My last slide will go into Ujima collective work and responsibility, which is focusing on the collective responsibility to uplift and support one another within the community. Now, due to unforeseen circumstances, Lupe had to cancel the microlearning pod the day before the event. Because it was due to COVID, we were kind of prepared for any last minute hiccups that could have risen here because of our first event, ironically enough. But there were activations for this event that went extremely well, providing individuals a space to talk about how they are disrupting the narrative in their own industries. Individuals loved the vibe of Black Market and how it was set up. Huge shout out to Janella, Gio, and Mary for their support in making that happen in this space. The jam session was deeply appreciated by the individuals present. The Ujima staff supported the band setup. They participated and engaged with the individuals present. And one of the most common questions asked, what is the Boston Ujima Project? The staff did a great job supporting and explaining what that was. This event was super successful, and there's a link to this video that I'm not going to play right now, but set up the entire vibe of what happened that day. So if anybody's interested in that, I'll be able to drop it into the chat as well as a file that you guys can all see the images from this. So what now? You got the information, you got the reflection, you listened to me speak. So now what? I have some deliverables for y'all if you care to want to take them into consideration. I would consider doing an intro to microlearning pods, meeting or training, setting expectations, roles of everybody in Ujima, what Ujima is, the responsibilities, etc. COVID regulations, other systems in place being explicitly communicated for individuals doing in-person events. Clear understanding of how things will look like, be used, and how they have been in the past few months. Past few microlearning pod instructors. Ujima is collective work and responsibility. So just as y'all have showed up for me, I'm definitely willing to show up for y'all, whether that's in support of the development of the microlearning pods intro or to be called on to speak again. Take the YouTube video down. I think that's self-explanatory. Consider paying guest speakers. I think it was pretty dope to have individuals that were super down to show up and just speak. But if that's something that can happen, let it happen. Continue to have food. That definitely sets the entire vibe of the space and keeps people engaged and wanting to be present. And if there's a future partnership, if you guys are interested in it, I'm super open to having that happen. The conversation with Lupe is still happening now that he's going to be back in Boston in the next 2 weeks. Something will be solidified in regards to dates. Continuing the Disrupt the Narrative series, if Ujima wants to be a partner or sponsor of it, super open for that. The Museum of Science is looking to do 2 events with 2 speakers, and if Ujima would like to participate in any capacity, I am super open and would love to do that with you all. Well done. Thank you guys so much for selecting me to be a microlearning pod facilitator and having me here to speak. That's all I got.
Hello. So I have a question for Kelsey, and maybe this is for James too. So I'm thinking, you've mentioned this a few times in the presentation. You talked about political education, and I'm trying to just bring up the slide again. And there was one piece where I'm not sure if you went into this at all, Kelsey, but I'm curious, and maybe it will be instructive in terms of the ask of people joining. I'm curious about why you joined the resourcing team, and actually this would be my question for James too. And if you could say more about your, I don't know if passion would be the right word, but commitment to resourcing and fundraising. So I'm just curious if you could talk about that, and James as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make it brief. But I think long story short for me is, so first, transparent for everyone. I don't identify as someone who comes from wealth. I would identify myself as solidly middle class. And within that, I think one of the biggest things for me is like when I've looked at my career, which this sounds off base, but I'm gonna get there. I was in politics and policy for a while, and through that, I started asking folks about what are the solutions to our big problems. And I was interested in reparations and wealth redistribution as a white person, and often was redirected to spaces that were predominantly for wealthy folks. But through that, I actually was pushed to Ujima. And I really loved the work that you all were doing. I love the idea of a democratically run investment fund. And the solutions that I saw you pouring into were solutions that I wanted for the city of Boston and frankly, our country. Um, so that pushed me to be a Solidarity member. And what Solidarity membership looked like for me was just donating essentially once a year to join that. And so I was volunteering time as well. But along the way, outside of Ujima, I was starting to learn more about the history of philanthropy and the like abysmal funding numbers for grassroots groups and groups like Ujima that are doing the work. And so between learning about essentially what I've heard called philanthropic redlining, but also starting to read books like The Revolution Will Not Be Funded, and really thinking about how large philanthropic institutions can, in some ways, like really quiet the voices of groups like Ujima, who rely really heavily on that funding. For me, it became part of like my own political action to become a monthly donor at places that I really cared about. And like within that, I think along that journey, I got like really freaked out of like, oh my God, what if I pick the wrong organization? Like, how do I pick an org that covers all the things I care about? And so it also took some, frankly, like embodiment reflection and like stepping out of perfectionism in order to then commit to like, I can be a monthly donor. And it also took my own like education on my finances. So just like brief aside, and then I'll wrap. I grew up in a house that was really generous, but also a house that said, if you find yourself in economic crisis, the state won't save you, your friends won't save you, your family won't save you, only you will save you. So you must save as much as you can while also being generous. And you can see that tension there. So it was a mixture of like political unpacking, personal journey unpacking, and really sitting with the fact that, donations and committing to an organization are just as much like a political action that folks can take as going out to a protest and volunteering time. And so like for me at least, really big ups to the Resource Organizing Project, because they were a big part of that political journey for me. But then also really big ups to groups like Center for Economic Democracy and New Economy Coalition. And then full transparency for folks, I switched from working in public policy to philanthropy. And that kind of brought me on a journey too of learning just like the ins and outs of a really weird field. So that's how I got to the resourcing team. And I missed UNESCO, and it just seemed like a natural fit when I saw it come up because I do resourcing work with ROP.
Thank you, Kelsey.
You still want me to go, Nia?
Yes, please, James.
Okay. Yeah, I think I resonate with a lot of things that you mentioned, Kelsey. I think one piece for me, I think I've always just enjoyed fundraising. I've always seen myself as someone who was skilled with understanding relationships and knowing how to leverage them to support something that mattered to me. And I think so part of Ujima, I had sort of built a career doing this for a number of different nonprofits. But I think as you coming into like knowledge and decolonizing philanthropy, there's sort of a movement that was really naming just the like extractive capitalist like history of a lot of these big philanthropic institutions. And I think I was just like, when I would work at these nonprofits, oftentimes they were just like pander so much to these big institutional foundations. And I was like, and I was just talking to someone about just being embodied. And I remember going into those meetings all the time, with the same rat race, raising, $1 million every year and just trying to beg to these foundations to give you like 100K or something like that. and just feeling my body just like, I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. I don't want to do this anymore. They're not even doing the work in the communities that like I care about. And so I think, meeting Nia, I joined the fundraising team because, I was really captured by this vision that Ujima was creating, and it felt really aligned with just who I am and the spirit of collectivity that I think I exist in. And I felt better. I felt excited to think about going into meetings and talking about Ujima. I felt like I could do that. And Nia knows, like, I could be very bold with like speaking about our vision and why people should, be part of this. And I think I wanted to shift professionally in a way where I could do that. And also I would do it creatively, right? And not sort of like do the same things or galas and like emails. Like, I think I was really excited to think about it outside of like what has already been done, but like really push our thinking, our creativity to explore relationship building more expansively. And so I think that's what really, Nia and I were talking about the Black, what ended up becoming the United Black Economies campaign, but, was initially just like our Black Giving campaign. And so, just thinking about it in ways I feel like that really centered my values and my people, got me going.
Thank you, James.
I can maybe offer an answer to your question.
Yeah.
So in my immediate thought is when there are kind of discrete campaigns or initiatives that are like, we want 100 new donors, or it's going to be from this time to this time. Yeah, exactly. It's like it becomes much more. My calendar becomes much more like available, not because of that, but because then I could say, okay, do I have time? Can I shift something? Whereas something that's kind of an ongoing commitment, an ongoing, like passion, it feels to me that I have to make way more energy, time, even though maybe the number of hours that I might do in a year, would be maybe the same. But it's kind of, that's how I think about it. And even though I have some commitments on an ongoing basis, year over year in some way, as well as my own passion, right? It's when I hear, hey, come out for these, 3 events, call your, when there's some like initiative and it's somewhat discrete, meaning has boundaries and a time frame and a goal, then it really does kind of help me to say, yes, all of the things that I might have or not have, and this I can or cannot. And so it's kind of like, and that's kind of, I think, how we phrased it whenever we share things with the Anchor Faith Network. It's, hey, there's there's an initiative, there's a project, there's like a deadline, there's a number we're trying to reach. And I think, at least when I see something like that, it helps me decide yes more often than those long projects or commitments. I don't know if that helps.
That does help. Thank you.
I have another question, if no one else has a question. Okay. Catherine, thank you. I really appreciate your presentation. So I really appreciate you set up the way I'm receiving it is you set up some obstacles and then set up essentially kind of overcoming those obstacles and making it through, and then not only making it through, a commitment to return. So I actually really appreciate the journey you outlined. And it does make me think of when I think of our member teams, it's supposed to be practice for self organizing. They're essentially, for the most part, volunteer efforts. The micropod facilitators are paid, but still, it's still pretty volunteer driven. So number one, appreciating that. I think there's a lesson there. And so I guess my question for you would be, what kind of bigger lessons or learnings, based on your presentation, do you think would be relevant for other member teams and not just the arts and cultural organizing member team? And yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about your commitment and passion, I'd appreciate that as well. Because I think definitely continuing and coming back is a choice, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Something I would give to the rest of the member teams. I would say take a step back, be patient, and understand all the pieces that are taking place in a situation across the board, whether that's working with people, working with partners, working with anybody. Take a step back, be patient, and take a minute to understand everything that's going on. There are things that happen beyond just your perspective, and be mindful of that. And yeah, that could help in navigating a lot of the situations you go through. That'll be the first thing I bring up. And Nia, can you say your second question again?
Yeah, and then I would say it's similar to what I asked Kelsey and James. So I think that there is a commitment or a passion that's at work, because it is a choice to continue and then to return, because it's also just as easily another choice to say, well, this didn't go the way I wanted it to go.
Yeah.
That's that. I'll wrap it up.
For me, what my commitment looks like, I really do appreciate and love the work that Ujima does, especially in the arts and cultural space, being able to witness the way community comes together and seeing all that you all are willing to do for the community. So that's something that I feel like I'm always going to be committed to. In regards to continuing disrupt the narrative, I really started it with Ujima. The idea and the concept came from me doing research on Ujima, what they've been about, and what I could bring that is me. And so moving forward, I'd love to continue the Disrupt the Narrative series. And I am, and in any capacity that I could have Ujima working with me on that, whether that's them having people they want to, see, sit on and have a conversation with, ways we could explore, continuing it to host in space. I would really, really love and appreciate doing that because, yeah, it was like essentially birthed here. So continuing that relationship.
I have a question. If Kat would be open to sharing the presentation with us, that'd be great.
Yeah, you can have the presentation if you want it. I got you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got it.
Any last questions? Sounds good. We'll wrap it up. Everybody have a great night. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for all of our speakers. Talk to y'all soon.